The first scream wasn't heard across space. It was recorded as silence. Across the Galactic Council's vast surveillance network, millions of quantum observatories suspended between stars, gravitational listening arrays orbiting black holes, and ancient sensor relays older than most civilizations, not a single alarm sounded. Instead, an impossible absence spread through the data streams. Entire constellations simply stopped existing. One heartbeat they glowed with the signatures of thriving worlds, bustling trade routes, and billions of living minds. The next, every signal vanished. No explosion. No radiation burst. No debris fields drifting through the vacuum. Just an unnatural void where life itself had once flourished. Operators stared at their displays in frozen disbelief, convinced their instruments had failed. Engineers rebooted systems that had never malfunctioned in 10,000 years. Artificial intelligences cross-checked every sensor, every telescope, every quantum relay. The answer remained unchanged. Those civilizations had not been destroyed. They had been erased, leaving behind a silence so complete that even space itself seemed afraid to fill it. Inside the Council's towering Citadel station, suspended above the galactic core like a crown of polished silver, emergency chambers filled with anxious delegates from hundreds of worlds. Holographic star maps shimmered above the circular chamber, but instead of familiar clusters of light, enormous black scars now spread across the projection like ink bleeding through paper. Entire sectors had become empty shadows. Military commanders searched desperately for logical explanations. Pirates? Impossible. Civil war? Not on that scale. A supernova chain reaction? Physics itself rejected the idea. Yet every theory collapsed beneath the horrifying evidence. Whatever had happened had ignored every law the galaxy believed was absolute. Still, arrogance proved stronger than fear. The humans, one council admiral declared with absolute certainty, his voice echoing confidently through the chamber. This is another desperate attempt to frighten us. Murmurs of agreement spread almost instantly. Humanity had become the galaxy's favorite scapegoat. They were stubborn. Independent. Unpredictable. For decades they had refused to obey council authority, expanding beyond assigned sectors and constructing mysterious installations hidden inside asteroid belts and forgotten nebulae. They spoke constantly of dangers lurking beyond explored space, warning every civilization to prepare for an enemy no one had ever seen. The council dismissed those warnings as primitive paranoia. Humanity, they believed, had simply invented monsters to justify its growing military strength. Now, with unexplained disappearances spreading across distant frontiers, blaming humans felt easier than admitting ignorance. The vote for military action passed within minutes. Earth was ordered to surrender its fleets, dismantle its defensive networks, and submit every classified research archive for council inspection. The response arrived exactly 7 minutes later. One sentence. No signatures. No negotiation. You have mistaken restraint for weakness. Silence settled across the chamber. Some delegates laughed. Others rolled their eyes. The oldest representatives, those whose civilizations remembered histories long forgotten by younger species, said nothing at all. They exchanged quiet, uneasy glances, as if those 7 words had awakened memories buried beneath thousands of years of peace. Somewhere beyond the mapped edges of the galaxy, ancient warning beacons that had remained dormant for countless millennia suddenly came alive. One after another, forgotten stations hidden inside dead moons, drifting rogue planets, and abandoned star fortresses activated without command. Their crimson lights pierced the darkness like eyes opening after an endless sleep. No one inside the council noticed. They were already celebrating. Their fleets assembled. Their war speeches echoed across civilized space. News networks declared humanity isolated, surrounded, and only days away from surrender. Across countless worlds, citizens watched fireworks illuminate capital cities, believing another short campaign would reinforce the Council's unquestioned dominance. But far beyond every celebration, beyond every star chart, beyond the last signal humanity had ever dared to explore, something moved. And for the first time in ages, it was moving toward the light. Captain Elena Hayes stood alone on the command bridge of the Aegis Eternal, her reflection faintly visible against the reinforced crystal viewport as the light of a dying neutron star pulsed across the darkness. Every few seconds, the collapsed star released a wave of pale blue radiation that washed over the silent fleet beyond, revealing thousands of warships suspended in perfect formation before they disappeared into shadow once again. Their matte black hulls swallowed light instead of reflecting it, making them appear less like machines and more like fragments of the void itself. There were no running lights. No proud military banners. No triumphant broadcasts. Only disciplined silence. To any passing observer, the region looked abandoned. That illusion had kept humanity alive for nearly half a century. The bridge itself felt almost sacred. Holographic tactical displays floated quietly in the air, projecting countless layers of encrypted data that shifted with graceful precision. Officers spoke only in whispers, their movements deliberate, every command transmitted through secure neural channels instead of spoken aloud. Even the ship's artificial intelligence reduced its voice to a calm murmur, respecting the silence that had become humanity's greatest weapon. Here, noise was more dangerous than enemy fire. Elena slowly folded her hands behind her back, her eyes fixed on the endless sea of hidden vessels outside. Battleships. Carrier platforms. Drone swarms. Medical arcs. Planetary defense cruisers. Generations of engineering had been poured into this armada without the galaxy ever realizing it existed. Every ship represented decades of sacrifice, families separated, colonies built in secret, economies redirected beneath layers of civilian infrastructure. Humanity had willingly accepted being underestimated because secrecy had always been worth more than pride. Her thoughts drifted back to childhood. She remembered sitting beside her grandfather beneath Earth's night sky as he pointed toward the stars. He had never spoken about alien empires or interstellar politics. Instead, he told stories about responsibility. Strength isn't measured by how loudly you can fight, he had once said. It's measured by how long you're willing to wait before you have to. She had not understood those words then. Now they defined her entire life. Behind the bridge, a massive holographic projection of known space slowly rotated, revealing something the Galactic Council had never seen. Hidden beneath ordinary star charts lay another network entirely, a web of concealed installations stretching across thousands of light-years. Asteroid mining stations that secretly housed antimatter reactors. Scientific observatories that doubled as weapons platforms. Ice-covered moons concealing shipyards larger than entire cities. Ancient comets converted into mobile supply depots drifting silently through forgotten systems. Individually they appeared harmless. Together they formed the largest defensive infrastructure ever constructed by a single civilization. Every location existed for one reason. Delay the inevitable. An operations officer finally broke the silence. Captain. Council fleets continue mobilizing. Elena nodded but didn't answer immediately. The tactical display expanded, revealing hundreds of Council armadas leaving their home sectors. To them, this was a political operation. A demonstration of authority. Another campaign against a stubborn younger species refusing to obey galactic order. They had no idea what humanity had truly been preparing for. They still think we're building an empire, another officer whispered. A faint smile crossed Elena's face, not one of confidence, but of quiet sadness. No, she replied softly. They think empires survive forever. The bridge fell silent again. Outside, automated construction drones continued assembling new defensive satellites around the hidden fleet, each movement precise enough to avoid producing detectable energy signatures. Beyond them, stealth platforms drifted like invisible guardians, waiting for orders that everyone aboard hoped would never come. Then, without warning, a low chime echoed across every console. One of humanity's oldest deep space listening stations had transmitted a priority signal. Not from within the galaxy. From beyond its edge. Every officer turned toward the display as encrypted coordinates slowly appeared across the hologram. No one spoke. Because every person on that bridge knew exactly what those coordinates meant. The enemy humanity had spent generations preparing to face, had finally begun to move. The first colony fell in less than 12 minutes. There was no declaration of war. No diplomatic warning. No final opportunity to surrender. The peaceful farming world of New Carthage, where golden fields stretched beneath twin suns and children had never known the sound of orbital weapons, disappeared beneath a storm of fire descending from the heavens. Council battlecruisers pierced the atmosphere in flawless formation, their engines painting the sky with rivers of white plasma. Seconds later, precision bombardments transformed thriving cities into oceans of molten glass. From orbit, the operation appeared clinical, clean, efficient, almost beautiful. On the ground, it was absolute horror. Families ran through streets swallowed by collapsing buildings. Emergency sirens fought to rise above the roar of collapsing skylines. Hospitals overflowed before they themselves vanished beneath waves of burning debris. By the time the smoke cleared, one of humanity's oldest colonies had become nothing more than a black scar on the surface of an otherwise peaceful world. And still, the Council called it a necessary demonstration. Across the galaxy, frightened citizens watched carefully edited broadcasts claiming humanity had provoked the attack. Council officials spoke confidently about restoring order while polished news anchors praised the operation as a victory for peace. Few questioned the official story. Fewer still wanted to. Believing the broadcasts was easier than confronting the uncomfortable truth that an entire civilization had just been punished for refusing to kneel. The attacks spread quickly. Mining stations hidden within asteroid belts were vaporized before evacuation orders arrived. Scientific outposts vanished from communication networks one by one. Refugee convoys carrying wounded civilians were intercepted in deep space, their distress signals echoing helplessly through empty star systems before falling silent forever. Freight vessels drifted abandoned with life support still functioning, yet every passenger had disappeared without explanation. Survivors who reached safety carried haunted expressions that words could no longer describe. Captain Elena Hayes watched every report arrive aboard the Aegis Eternal. Each casualty list grew longer. Each transmission ended the same way. Requesting immediate assistance. Any human vessel. Please. Then silence. She remained motionless as holographic maps filled with flashing red markers. Every blinking light represented another settlement under attack. Another family waiting for help that would never come in time. Around her, officers clenched their fists until their knuckles turned white, but no one demanded retaliation. They understood the unbearable weight pressing on their captain's shoulders. Humanity possessed the strength to strike back immediately. But doing so might awaken something far worse. Every hour they delayed cost innocent lives. Every hour they acted recklessly risked countless more. It was an impossible choice. Then the universe answered for them. Deep beyond the spiral arms of the Milky Way, automated listening stations detected something they had not recorded in nearly 6,000 years. Movement. Not ships. Not natural celestial bodies. Something immense. Objects larger than moons drifted silently between galaxies, changing course with impossible precision. Their trajectories ignored gravity itself, bending through the darkness as though space willingly moved aside for them. Ancient sensor algorithms, programs written by humanity's earliest deep space observers and preserved across generations, identified the pattern almost instantly. External response detected. Bridge officers exchanged uneasy glances. No one needed further explanation. The impossible had happened. The violence filling the galaxy had become loud enough to attract attention from beyond it. Encrypted emergency transmissions flooded every hidden human installation simultaneously. Buried protocols older than most governments unlocked themselves without human authorization. Silent defense stations powered online beneath frozen oceans and forgotten moons. Deep space beacons began broadcasting coded warnings that only humanity could decipher. Captain Hayes stared at the growing wave of signals crossing the tactical display. The Council believed they were winning. Their fleets celebrated another successful offensive. Their admirals prepared speeches proclaiming humanity's inevitable surrender. They had no idea that every missile they fired, every colony they burned, every innocent life they erased, had echoed into the endless darkness beyond the galaxy. And something ancient, something unimaginably patient, had finally heard the noise. Beneath 2 miles of Antarctic ice, where temperatures had remained untouched by sunlight for millions of years, a vault older than every nation on Earth slowly awakened. Massive titanium doors groaned apart with the weight of forgotten centuries, releasing air that had been sealed away for generations. Frost drifted through the dimly lit chamber like ghostly mist as rows of dormant machines hummed back to life. Hidden beneath layers of classified history, this place had never appeared on any map, not human, not alien, not even within the most restricted military archives. It was known by only a handful of leaders across humanity's long history. They called it the First Archive. Captain Elena Hayes stepped into the chamber in absolute silence. Towering crystalline pillars surrounded her, each one containing fragments of humanity's oldest discoveries. Ancient star charts. Quantum recordings. Languages no longer spoken. Civilizations long erased from memory. At the center of the chamber floated a sphere of pale blue light, suspended above an obsidian pedestal. As Elena approached, the sphere awakened, projecting countless streams of symbols into the frozen air. The symbols shifted faster than the eye could follow before gradually reorganizing into familiar constellations. Not the galaxy as it existed today. The galaxy as it had existed hundreds of millions of years ago. It was crowded. Thousands upon thousands of advanced civilizations glittered across the projection, spreading from spiral arm to spiral arm like islands of light in an endless cosmic sea. Then, without warning, the stars began disappearing. Not one at a time. Entire regions vanished simultaneously. Civilizations blinked out like candles caught in an invisible storm. No explosions. No expanding shockwaves. Simply, absence. Within moments, a galaxy overflowing with life became terrifyingly empty. The recording ended in darkness. A calm synthetic voice echoed through the chamber. Archive 7. Final transmission of the Helios Continuum. The image changed again. This time, a fragmented message appeared from beings unlike any species humanity had encountered. Their forms shimmered with translucent energy, barely holding shape as if reality itself struggled to remember them. Static distorted much of the recording, but the translated words emerged with chilling clarity. Asterisk, if you are receiving this, then we have failed. Asterisk. Elena felt a cold weight settle in her chest. Asterisk, we believed our enemies sought territory. Asterisk. The figure flickered violently. Asterisk, we were wrong. Asterisk. Another burst of interference swept through the message. They do not conquer civilizations. The projection dimmed. Asterisk, they harvest them. Asterisk. Silence filled the chamber. Then another image appeared, one humanity had guarded for nearly 1,000 years. A graph of cosmic background radiation. At first glance, it resembled meaningless fluctuations left behind by the birth of the universe. But hidden beneath those ancient waves was an impossibly complex mathematical pattern, a message encoded into the oldest light in existence itself. Humanity's first quantum astronomers had discovered it centuries earlier while studying the earliest moments after the Big Bang. Every attempt to dismiss it as coincidence had failed. The deeper they analyzed it, the more undeniable the truth became. Someone, or something, had deliberately buried a warning inside the fabric of the universe. The decoded translation occupied only a single line. Remain silent. They follow conflict. Every major decision humanity had made since that discovery suddenly carried terrifying meaning. The hidden fleets. The secret fortresses. The silent defense grid stretching across thousands of light years. The refusal to provoke unnecessary wars. None of it had been designed to build an empire. Every sacrifice had served one desperate purpose. Keep the galaxy quiet. Keep the predators asleep. Captain Hayes closed her eyes for a brief moment. Outside this frozen sanctuary, the Galactic Council still believed humanity's defensive preparations were evidence of dangerous ambition. They mocked Earth's warnings. They ridiculed every request for restraint. Worse still, they had filled the stars with the very thing the warning forbade. Violence. Noise. Signal. Suddenly, crimson lights flooded the chamber. An automated alert echoed from every wall. Extragalactic contact confirmed. The holographic galaxy shifted. Beyond its outer rim, tiny markers appeared. Then hundreds more. Then thousands. They were no longer drifting. They were accelerating. Toward the Milky Way. Toward the Sound. The first of the ancient entities entered the galaxy without crossing its edge. It simply appeared. One moment, the darkness beyond the Milky Way was empty. The next, reality folded inward like rippling water, and something unimaginably vast emerged from the fracture. It dwarfed planets. It eclipsed entire star systems. Its surface shimmered with rivers of black light that bent around impossible geometry, as though the creature existed in dimensions the human mind could barely comprehend. Wherever it passed, starlight dimmed, gravity faltered, and every communication network dissolved into static. Fleets that had once inspired fear now looked microscopic against its immense silhouette. Panic erupted across the Galactic Council. Thousands of warships immediately opened fire. Brilliant lances of antimatter, relativistic rail slugs, stellar fusion torpedoes, and weapons capable of splitting moons converged on the colossal intruder. Space itself glowed white beneath the combined assault. Admirals shouted triumphant orders, convinced that no force in existence could survive such overwhelming firepower. Then the light faded. The entity hadn't moved. Every weapon had simply disappeared before reaching its surface, swallowed by invisible distortions that consumed energy as effortlessly as an ocean absorbs rain. For the first time in recorded history, the Council understood fear. Entire fleets attempted emergency retreats, but it was already too late. One by one, battlecruisers froze in place, surrounded by strange ripples spreading through space itself. Hulls remained intact. Shields never failed. Yet the ships silently collapsed inward, compressed into glowing points smaller than dust before vanishing completely. There were no explosions. No wreckage. Only absence. Across dozens of command bridges, terrified officers stared helplessly as civilizations that had ruled the stars for millennia disappeared within seconds. Aboard the hidden flagship Aegis Eternal, Captain Elena Hayes watched the same horrifying images unfold across every tactical display. The enemy had arrived exactly as humanity's archives had predicted. And exactly as they had feared. Around her, officers waited for orders with expressions carved from equal parts determination and grief. Every person on that bridge understood the truth. Protocol Last Dawn had never been designed for victory. Only survival. Elena took one slow breath before activating the command console embedded within the bridge floor. "Authorize Last Dawn," she whispered. The system hesitated for less than a second. Authorization accepted. Across the galaxy, thousands of hidden installations awakened simultaneously. Asteroids split open, revealing colossal gravitational engines buried beneath centuries of rock. Frozen moons cracked apart as enormous quantum transmitters rose toward the stars. Deep beneath lifeless planets, reactors older than entire civilizations roared to life. Humanity's invisible network, patiently assembled across generations, finally revealed itself. Golden lines spread across holographic star maps. One installation connected to another. Then another. Until a luminous web stretched across thousands of light years. The galaxy itself had become humanity's final weapon. As synchronized countdowns reached zero, gravitational fields ignited with breathtaking precision. Invisible currents bent spacetime into an immense lattice surrounding the advancing entities. Entire regions of space twisted like liquid glass. Black holes shifted by microscopic distances. Pulsars synchronized their emissions. The fabric of reality tightened into a prison forged from mathematics, sacrifice, and centuries of preparation. The ancient predators finally reacted. For the first time. They stopped advancing. Then they fought back. The lattice began collapsing under unimaginable pressure. Warning alarms screamed across every human vessel as overloads cascaded through the network. One by one, defense stations reached critical failure. Someone had to remain behind. Someone had to stabilize the grid manually. No one hesitated. Human pilots silently acknowledged one another across encrypted channels. No speeches. No farewell broadcasts. Only quiet acceptance. Attack craft accelerated directly toward collapsing singularity generators, using their own reactors to reinforce failing gravitational nodes. Battleships deliberately rammed unstable anchors to prevent catastrophic chain reactions. Engineers remained inside overheating cores long after escape became impossible, manually holding systems together as temperatures climbed beyond survivable limits. Captain Hayes watched hundreds. Then thousands. Then tens of thousands of friendly signals disappear from the tactical display. Each fading light represented a family. A dream. A name. Yet not one ship turned away. Because humanity had never been fighting for revenge. They were fighting for every child on every world, including those that had once cheered as Earth burned. As the final stabilization sequence completed, the immense gravitational prison collapsed inward with blinding brilliance, sealing the ancient entities inside a chain of artificial spacetime fractures that folded endlessly into themselves. Silence followed. The stars remained. The galaxy still existed. And history would forever remember the day humanity proved that true strength was never measured by the wars it could win, but by everything it was willing to sacrifice so that others could live. When the last gravitational wave finally faded, the galaxy did not celebrate. It simply breathed again. For endless minutes, silence ruled the stars. The violent distortions that had twisted entire sectors of space gradually unraveled, leaving behind skies that looked strangely unfamiliar. Nebulae once torn apart by impossible forces drifted back into graceful formation. Pulsars resumed their steady rhythm. Black holes settled into quiet balance as though the universe itself had survived a nightmare it desperately wanted to forget. Across thousands of systems, emergency shelters cautiously opened their reinforced doors. Civilians stepped onto shattered streets beneath smoke-filled skies, staring upward at constellations that still existed. Children who had expected the end of everything saw stars instead. Many fell to their knees without understanding why tears suddenly filled their eyes. The casualty reports arrived slowly. Too slowly. Entire human fleets no longer answered transmissions. Hospital ships searched battlefields where no wreckage remained, finding only faint gravitational echoes where brave crews had made their final stand. Tens of thousands of names appeared across memorial databases every hour. Then hundreds of thousands. Entire squadrons had vanished so completely that only encrypted service records proved they had ever existed. On Earth, every city dimmed its lights at the same moment. Streets fell silent. Transportation stopped. Factories shut down. Billions of people looked toward the night sky as orbital satellites projected the names of the fallen across the atmosphere in rivers of soft white light. Parents searched those endless lists with trembling hands. Some found the names they feared. Others kept searching, refusing to accept the silence. Captain Elena Hayes stood alone inside the observation deck of the Aegis Eternal, one of the few surviving command vessels. The bridge behind her buzzed with reports of reconstruction, rescue missions, and desperate medical evacuations, yet she heard none of it. Her eyes remained fixed on the stars beyond the glass. Somewhere out there, thousands of friends had chosen not to return. She remembered faces instead of ranks. Shared meals. Quiet conversations before impossible missions. Nervous laughter that hid fear no training could erase. They had known exactly what protocol Last Dawn demanded. None of them had asked for another plan. A gentle chime interrupted her thoughts. The first transmission from the Galactic Council arrived. Not an order. Not a demand. An apology. Across every surviving communication network, representatives of hundreds of civilizations appeared together without ceremonial robes, military decorations, or symbols of authority. Their faces carried exhaustion instead of pride. Some struggled to speak through visible emotion. "We judged humanity by its strength," one elder finally whispered. "When we should have judged it by its restraint." No one attempted to justify the war. No one defended the attacks on Earth's colonies. The truth no longer required debate. Humanity had possessed the power to retaliate long before the conflict began. It had chosen patience instead. It had accepted ridicule, isolation, even suffering. Not because it lacked courage, but because it understood what unchecked violence would awaken beyond the edge of known space. The Council voted to dissolve itself before the broadcast ended. Its banners were lowered. Its fleets disarmed. Its monuments rededicated, not to victory, but to remembrance. Years later, new generations would travel freely through a rebuilt galaxy. Children from worlds that had once feared one another would study together beneath skies filled with peaceful trade routes instead of warships. At the center of every major capital stood the same monument, not a weapon, not a conqueror, but a simple human figure facing the darkness beyond the stars, standing between the galaxy and the unknown. Beneath each monument, only one inscription was carved into the stone. They could have ruled us. Instead, they saved us. And far beyond the outer rim of the Milky Way, where the light of familiar stars faded into endless black, silent warning beacons continued their eternal vigil. Not as symbols of fear, but as reminders. Because every civilization now understood the lesson humanity had learned centuries before. Peace is never protected by those who seek war. It is protected by those willing to bear its heaviest burden, even when no one will ever know their names.